Welcome back to East Bay Sanctuary Covenant's special two-part series made in honor of the Week of Solidarity with Haiti. Last time, we heard the first half of Lisa Hoffman's interview with Pierre Labossière, co-founder of Haiti Emergency Relief Fund, HERF, and Haiti Action Committee. EBSC has partnered with HERF since 1991 to support grassroots development and human rights in Haiti. In this episode, Pierre and Lisa talk about Haitian TPS holders, environmental impacts, the coronavirus pandemic, and more. The episode starts off discussing the various delegations that EBSC's executive director, Sister Maureen, and members of EBSC took to Haiti in the past. We opted to conduct the interview in a park due to the pandemic, so you might hear children playing, dogs barking, and at one point sirens in the background. Lisa is also a bit more difficult to hear because Pierre was the only one connected to a microphone. So to help with that, we've included a full transcript if you have trouble hearing or would just like to follow along. A content warning: at times, Pierre and Lisa discuss deeply unsettling violence in some detail, so please take the necessary precautions to care for your mental and emotional health.
Sister Maureen took part in a huge delegation of health experts. You had doctors, you had nurses, and she coordinated that, and they did a vaccination and other campaign. And we connected with it was with the Aristide Foundation on the ground, and a lot of work was done. We had organized delegations when Father Jean-Just, the legendary priest, who was quite an advocate for refugees and fought for asylum for Haitians, he was arrested during the last coup in Haiti. I believe some of the delegations we organized, when I say we, Haiti Action Committee, EBSC, and Sister Maureen had visited one of the jails at least once or twice. And Sister Stella Goodpasture, who was working, also visited Father Jean-Just while he was in jail. And so the stories are of something else. They are phenomenal. And during one of the visits, I believe Sister Stella and Marilyn Langlois had, again, part of the work of EBSC. They saved a community that was going to be evicted by the United Nations forces. President Aristide had built those beautiful housing complexes for the poor. He said, why shouldn't the poor have access to a beautiful housing complex? And they were very modern, and so the UN wanted to house its soldiers and its personnel. So they were just going to kick out all those people. Fortunately, this happened to be at a time when the delegation was there. So somebody came to the delegation, that was during the coup, and said, this is what's going to happen to us. So Marilyn Langlois and Sister Stella, they mobilized into action right away, called the commander of the UN, had a meeting, and I don't know the full details because I wasn't there, but to summarize it, they reached the very top and said, you can't do this. These people, this is their home. You can't just kick them out. And so the UN backed down, and the people are still have their homes. So many of these, so many lives that have been so impacted by, at so many different levels, that I can't keep all of this in my head, At different times, the stories come back to me. But
what it shows is that, that it matters, that small groups of people
exactly
coming together to fight injustice matters.
Oh yes. So
and unfortunately, there's still an urgent and dire emergency.
Exactly. It is. It continues to be an emergency situation when we look at the earthquake in 2010, the various hurricanes that have hit Haiti back to back. The sad part about Haiti, the environment there has been so degraded that even when a hurricane doesn't hit Haiti directly, but just the rains alone cause massive flooding everywhere. I believe the most recent hurricane was Hurricane Laura, and it caused massive flooding throughout the South. People lost their their harvest, their animals and everything, because the environment is so degraded that, flooding takes place and people live such precarious lives. For example, some simple like clean the drainage canals, just clean them, dredge them. No, they pocket the money, they don't do that. You see, the sewers are clogged with garbage. So any little rain results in all of that dirty, fetid water comes out into people's home, where people are forced to hold their babies in their hand for the whole evening, and waiting for the waters to subside. So by the inaction of this corrupt government, and you have things that should be that natural, like a heavy rain, should be handled by drainage canals, and no, all of a sudden it's a catastrophe for the neighborhoods, for the impoverished communities in those neighborhoods.
And there's also been so much deforestation and extraction of resources
Precisely.
due to the policies.
My dad told me when he was a child, he was born in 1905, and he remembers in the 1920s how there used to be huge piles of timber on the seashore waiting for ships from the US, from Europe coming to get them. I said, really? And then I saw an article in the New York Times dated 1905 that was inviting lumber companies to come to Haiti for Haiti's inexhaustible, that was the title of the article, Haiti's inexhaustible supply of precious woods. And I said, so my father was not making it up. So we had a lot of forests in Haiti, and they even called them like inexhaustible. You could cut them and they would never end. And right now, less than 100 years later, 1905 to 1970, when people started talking about deforestation, everything was gone. And we started having those massive floodings everywhere and what have you. Catastrophic, I would say, because, there are natural floodings. But when you have to such a level that it's destroying, a country is destroying people's lives, you can't handle it, it's a catastrophe. Any little rain now is a catastrophe in Haiti.
Just thinking about the natural disasters and how they're impacting Haiti, and then thinking about the Haitians with temporary protected status, which was created as a humanitarian relief program for people to not be able to go back to their countries because of natural disasters and other epidemics and violence. Tell us a little bit about the situation for Haitian TPS holders in the United States right now.
The TPS temporary protected status was started, I believe, in 2010 as a result of the earthquake. But since then, in those 20 years, there have been, I had mentioned, terrible hurricanes that hit Haiti back to back, one year after another. And then the man-made disasters. What I mean by man-made disasters are the political, the murders, the mass killing, the massacres taking place all over Haiti. In addition to that, you've had the disastrous economic situation. When President Aristide was in office, the government was implementing measures to take the Haitian people from misery to at least poverty with dignity. In other words, they could provide for themselves, and the country was on its way to slowly recover and build the necessary infrastructure, such as healthcare, building hospitals, building schools, having clean sources of drinking water to address the basic needs of the population. A lot of the illnesses that afflict the Haitian people are things that are easily preventable by having clean sources of drinking water, adequate nutrition, having a healthcare structure, infrastructure that will serve the people, the children, the women, pregnant women, infants. Those are the things. But when you don't have that, you are really condemning people to to misery, to miserable living conditions. And also investing in the environment of Haiti, having the drainage canals cleaned, the sewer system cleaned up. So when the coup took place in 2004 and the government of President Aristide was overthrown, all of that investment in all of these infrastructures stopped. For example, the healthcare budget in Haiti was at 16.6% in 2004 when President Aristide was there. Right now, it's below 5%. So there has been a divestment in terms of healthcare. Education, likewise. Education was close to 20%, but now it's down to less than 13%, maybe 10%. Every day in Haiti, students, from little kids in middle school all the way to the university are taking to the streets. So for the past few years, what you've been seeing in Haiti, it's been a huge student and teacher movement because the teachers aren't paid. Not because Haiti doesn't have any money. Haiti had received $4.2 billion of the Petro-Caribbean money that was supposed to be invested in schools, in hospitals, in healthcare infrastructure. Haitians also, for example, myself, when I send money to Haiti, the government gets $1.50 from every transaction, which amounts to millions of dollars yearly, right? We are talking, I've heard all kinds of figures, as much as $66 million or what have you. All of this is supposed to go to the schools. Yet the teachers, some teachers spend 18 months not getting paid 1 cent. Students show up in class, no teachers. So they've been staging demonstration, and it's been going on year after year. So there has been tons of money in the country that have been pocketed by big non-governmental agencies that control those funds, also by government officials and other foreigners who are making tons of money off the misery of the people of Haiti. And so this is the situation that has made Haiti such a, if I may say, such a living hell, miserable with miserable conditions, and that's what people are fleeing from. It's been estimated that there are about between 50 to 55,000 individuals who are TPS holders from the Haitian community. But then when you look at these people and their children and other connected families, I've heard numbers as much as 200,000, if not more. So when you take these families, you put them back into Haiti, high unemployment, no resources for the people living there right now. Now you're going to put so many at the mercy of this situation. It's really criminal. Whereas the many TPS holders are working here and they're able to support their relatives and their families in Haiti. Plus also you have a situation of mass killing. The impoverished communities in Haiti are facing a lot of massacres. There is a massacre somewhere in a neighborhood in Port-au-Prince and the Haitian police doesn't show up to help anybody. People are being kidnapped all the time for ransom. I mean, including a poor person, there is a price for everyone. So you bring people to that situation. It is criminal. And the Trump administration, the US administration, they know that very well. If anybody has their pulse on the situation in Haiti, they know it. So to me, it is criminal for the Trump administration and any other for the US administrations to force people to return to a situation where they know their lives are at stake, the conditions aren't right, the economic conditions are terrible for people, and not even talking about the pandemic right now, where people are very, very exposed, and in a situation where public healthcare system is completely non-existent.
How is COVID affecting the Haitian community here in the U.S.?
It's been hard. Many people in the Haitian community in the U.S. have been greatly impacted by it and have died. In Haiti itself, it's been very difficult. But thank God for natural remedies. At one point, the Haitian government had estimated that there would be between 1,000 and 1,500 deaths per week. But fortunately, that hasn't come to be. Not because of anything the Haitian government did. As a matter of fact, they were just making money of inflating numbers and getting money from the world community. The latest figure I heard was $56 million that they had gotten supposedly to help the population, but nobody could see where that money went. Doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals were refusing to go to work because they had no personal protective equipment. And they were wondering what happened to that $56 million. And these are people in Port-au-Prince. I'm not talking about people outside in the countryside. I'm talking about right there in the capital city. They couldn't see where the personal protective equipment was. People had learned not to rely on the government for anything, so they decided to find natural remedies, whatever they could find, to help each other, to provide for each other, to support each other. And so the dire predictions of 1,500 deaths or so per week didn't come to pass, fortunately.
All right. Do you have any other questions?
Yeah, actually. So, given that there's so much corruption, both in the Haitian government and with the U.S. government and NGOs and everything, what would you say to the average American who might want to help out in any way they can with what's going on in Haiti?
One of the things I would say is to be very careful, is to choose carefully who you are giving assistance to. Because you have a lot of big NGOs that have slick commercial on TV and what have you. It touches your heart, it pulls to the heartstring. We've seen that, for example, the Red Cross, I'm going to call their name out, because they were involved in so many scandals in Haiti. One scandal in particular was out of all the money, close to $600 million, they could only account for 6 houses that were built with that money. Where did the rest of the money go? Nobody knows. From various people who have analyzed the situation, they said this cannot account for $600 million. And so many others. I don't mean to pick on them alone, but there is a number of presentations, videos, articles that have been written that says, Haiti, where did the money go? Former President Clinton has been severely criticized because he was in charge of the rebuilding process in Haiti. And when you look at all the monies that these people controlled, the various governments that have come since the earthquake, nobody could account for this money. Where has it gone? I've heard 18 billion, I've heard less, but where has this money gone? Not one hospital has been built. The General Hospital in Port-au-Prince, millions of dollars poured into this. 10 years in being rebuilt, nothing. You look at where it is now. It's like, what has been built there? There was another hospital called Simbi Hospital. Supposedly the money was actually disbursed. Only, from what I've heard and I've seen pictures, only 6 columns. 6 columns have been put into the ground and they stand there. And when you think of millions of dollars disbursed, no work has been done. It's a huge scandal. Haiti is a crime scene. It's a corruption crime scene. Having said that, there are institutions that will do the right thing with the money. I can think of Dr. Paul Farmer, Partners in Health, is one such good organization. And definitely, I mentioned the Aristide Foundation for Democracy and UNIFA, the University of the Aristide Foundation, and the building of the hospital.
Pierre, where are some places that people can go to learn more?
The Haiti Action Committee, our website is haitisolidarity.net, and that's a good place. Also, Kevin Pina runs a Twitter page, which is called Haiti Info Page, which is pretty good. And also, I want to say that the webinar on Haiti that took place on August 8th was phenomenal. People can see it on the website of the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund. So it's haitiemergencyrelief.org. haitiemergencyrelief.org. The webinar, excellent webinar with former First Lady Mildred Aristide. You also had great presentations by Congresswoman Maxine Waters, actor Danny Glover, and also Laura Flynn was the moderator. She knows Haiti very well. Attorney Ira Kurzban, a phenomenal man. He's an immigration attorney who's always been fighting for refugees and immigrants. And also Dr. Henry Ford was another presenter. And we were talking about Black Lives Matter and a young leader from the Black Lives Matter movement. Her name is Corona Hoffman. She representing the younger generation of activists, of people who want to see justice instead of injustice. So it's a beautiful webinar, and it's on the website of it's haitiemergencyrelief.org. So those are some sources I would recommend.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That wraps up our two-part series all about Haiti. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you to Lisa Hoffman and Pierre Labossière for sharing their conversation with us. You can learn more about Haiti by going to the Haiti Emergency Relief Fund website at haitiemergencyrelief.org or the Haiti Action Committee website at haitisolidarity.net. You can also follow them on Facebook and on Twitter at Haiti Action 1. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at East Bay Sanctuary and on Twitter at eBay Sanctuary, or on our website at eastbaysanctuary.org. Music used for this episode was written by Kevin MacLeod, provided by Incompetech.com. This episode was edited by Nerine Ortiz Pon. Until next time, we hope you protect, advocate, and transform.